What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the 14th Star Trek film, a made-for-television movie, as they label it. I don't think that way. I think it's straight to streaming, but we'll talk about that in a minute, and that is Star Trek Section 31, starring Michelle Yeoh. Emperor Philippa Georgiou joins a secret division of Starfleet tasked with protecting the United Federation of Planets and faces the sins of her past. I saw the trailer for this at San Diego Comic-Con when I went this past summer. I was like, oh, that looks cool. Looks like something different in the Star Trek universe. And I'm going to be quite honest with you right now. I'm not a big Trekkie, you know? I watched the movies all the way through for the first time a couple years ago, from motion picture to beyond. I had only seen Star Trek '09, Into Darkness, and Beyond up to that point, but I watched all the rest of them. And I have very mixed feelings on the movies as a whole, because I feel like the odd ones are the bad ones, the even numbered ones are the good ones, until you get to the Kelvin timeline where it kind of switches up a little bit. But I was intrigued because I was like, this seems like something very different from the Star Trek universe. I really want to see what this has in store. And now I feel like everybody else who had reservations about this movie, because this was pretty damn bad. I really don't care if it's labeled as a television movie, because it didn't feel like that. It had the budget of somewhere in between. It looked like it had the budget of a straight to streaming movie or a straight to DVD movie. You know what this felt like? It felt like one of those Netflix action movies. It came from the same bread and butter as a Netflix action movie. What I liked about Star Trek Section 31, Michelle Yeoh always brings it in anything she's in. She's always a charm. She's always a delight to watch, even in the action scenes, because she has a martial arts background, so you can see her doing her own stunts, but she just has this charisma to her where it's just like, yeah, you're probably always going to be the best part of something you're in. That's exactly how I felt watching her in this movie. Omari Hardwick as this character, Alok, I thought he was pretty good. The rest of the movie, though, is completely like, I don't know what the hell happened. The way that they described this movie was that it was Mission Impossible meets Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's a heist in space. Okay, I give them credit for trying to do something different with Star Trek. But honestly, in the end, after just sitting through a 90-minute movie, yeah, it's only 90 minutes compared to most other Star Trek movies that are pushing 2 hours or over 2 hours. I think only Final Frontier and The Search for Spock are less than 2 hours, but even then, they're pushing an hour and 50. The movie, to me, didn't feel like Star Trek. It just felt like you could take all of the Star Trek connections out of the movie, and the movie would be no different. They try to get this band from Section 31, this group of Section 31 agents. They try to get you to like these guys, but they just come across as insufferable, annoying, and really stupid. The movie is essentially just trying to be a heist movie with a combination of sci-fi comedy in it, but it really fails in that regard, because every other line is either somebody throwing a really forced, lame-ass joke, or it's really just exposition. You don't really take the time to marinate and get to know these characters. Really, what it is that everything, almost every line of dialogue in Section 31 is exposition. The way these characters are introduced is through exposition. You learn everything about them through people telling you about them instead of actually you seeing them and their personalities as to what they do. There's this Vulcan guy who's actually an android controlled by an alien, and he's the most annoying character in the entire movie. And there's this other guy who has this Irish accent, which is fine, but he can't perfect the Irish accent, and he looks like Data. And it's almost as if they're trying to remind you, hey, wink, wink, this is Star Trek. It just doesn't work out in that regard. It's missing the cool action that Mission Impossible has, and it's lacking the charm and the actual comedy that Guardians of the Galaxy has. So those comparisons that the producers are making with this movie feel null and void. The villain in here is also one of the lamest Star Trek villains I've ever seen. Probably the worst Star Trek villain. And I know we've gotten some bad Star Trek villains in these movies. But hey, listen to this, okay? As bad as the motion picture and Final Frontier are, there's at least some redeeming qualities about them that still make you feel like you are watching a Star Trek movie. I really didn't get the vibes of Star Trek from this, which makes me believe that both the motion picture and, in particular, Final Frontier are better Star Trek movies than Section 31. To me, this is the worst Star Trek movie that is out there, and I know Final Frontier exists, but hey, you know what? You know what Final Frontier has that this movie doesn't have? Captain Claw. If Captain Claw was in this movie, I'd be saying probably one of the best Star Trek movies ever made. Captain Claw is awesome. And when he briefly comes back in the undiscovered country, Shit was awesome. The editing is so all over the place too. The action is so janky. It's almost like when they went to edit the action scenes, whoever was editing the movie took a jackhammer and just had it go across the keyboard on their computer. That's what the editing for this movie feels like. And there's so many scenes in this movie where it feels like, okay, I can see where the money is being thrown at on the screen. And then there's others where it's like, is that really CGI? Like, that's the best you got? And again, it's 90 minutes. The movie doesn't have a story that is big enough or grand enough to have that theatrical runtime to it. This feels like it should have just been an episode in one of the more recent Star Trek series that is airing on Paramount Plus. This is a 43-minute Star Trek episode trapped in a 90-minute movie. I didn't like this movie at all. I think that this is by far the worst Star Trek movie that exists. It's worse than Final Frontier. It is worse than Motion Picture because those at least have Star Trek things in them. I feel like even though those movies are bad, I get the Star Trek vibes. I don't get the Star Trek vibes here. And even though I appreciate that this movie is trying to do something completely different, it just didn't work. It just doesn't feel like Star Trek. It feels like generic spy stuff, generic heist stuff, generic sci-fi stuff where if you take the Star Trek connections out, nothing's really going to change. You're still going to have a really terrible sci-fi adventure. It really felt like that side of the Star Wars universe where Star Wars Outlaws exists. Take that as you will. Star Trek Section 31 is a bad movie and it belongs in popcorn hell. Wow. Did not think I would like a Star Trek movie less than Final Frontier, my least favorite Star Trek movie of all time. So if you have seen Star Trek Section 31, let me know what you think of it in the comments below. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I will see you at the movies somewhere.